You can shout it out, you don't have to raise your hands. Birds, exactly. But they're really sort of, well, they're very different from your average bird, but they're also really similar. So who can tell me what all birds have in common? You can shout out some answers. Feathers, I hear feathers. Beaks, eggs, did I hear eggs? Yes, and wings. So these animals have beaks, feathers, wings, they lay eggs, all of those very, very typical bird-like characteristics. But as you can see, all of these things that they do are very different from sort of your average little song sparrow. So their feathers are very, very special. These animals have the most feathers per square inch of any bird. So their feathers are incredibly dense and very, very insulating. So when these animals are swimming in the water, like these guys are doing right here, they're playing a little game of tag over here. So when they're in the water like this, their feathers are so insulating and keep them so warm that their skin hardly gets wet at all. So that's pretty awesome. And they actually waterproof it by touching an oil gland. They have a special little gland right above their tail. And of course, none of them are actually preening themselves, so I can show you what it looks like. And then they take that oil from their oil gland and they run it all over their feathers. And they'll rub it on their wings, and then they'll rub their wings all over their heads. And that helps keep them very, very clean and well insulated. And up, here we go. So here comes our biologist, our very lovely penguin biologist. Everybody, let's say hello to biologist Pam. Hi, Pam. And in the back here, you see some recorders. These are people who are going to take a look at which penguin eats how much. This is how we can help monitor the health of these animals. They're all very, very highly individualistic, aren't they, Pam?
They are, and including our recorders. We've got two sets of groups of people that represent different parts of the academy. So these two young ladies on the right-hand side, they're part of our Careers in Science program. They're interns. It's an intern that's a paid position. Usually we recruit somewhere between 9th and 10th grade. If any of you are in the San Francisco School District, getting to that age, I'd start looking at our website between February and March. Our applications go online at that point. It's a highly desired position. Not only do they assist in here, but they assist throughout the academy. It's a great way to kind of build up your science experience. And then on the left-hand side, we have one of our docents. So our docents go through an extreme amount of training to be able to interpret all of you many of the different areas of the academy. So from just basically directions to where you can find something to extreme knowledge of different exhibits. I would take a look for anybody in the orange lab coat because what they're doing is they're here to interpret the academy. So a combination, all three of these guys would be doing exactly what Kira said, which is essentially recording what these penguins are feeding on.
And like I was saying, that the amount of food that these birds eat can be a great indicator as to how that particular bird is doing. Like they might eat more, say, if they were planning on laying an egg, or if maybe they were about to go into a molt. I was talking about their very, very specialized feathers. They actually go through a pretty specialized molt, too. It's called a catastrophic molt, and they lose all of their feathers all at once a year. And Pam here is actually talking to one, well, not talking to, you're...
talking as I get.
She is interacting with a minor celebrity here. That is Pierre. Pierre the penguin. And Pierre the penguin had a little trouble with his molt a few years ago. Do you want to tell us about that, Pam?
Right. He ended up not replacing his feathers as he should. There's essentially a shelf life to their feathers. They become very brittle, start to break off. He went bald for a period of his life. And ultimately, the only way I had of being able to treat that was to put a wetsuit on him. His wetsuit is located over here. That is one. There's two of them that he had. That's one of the ones that he wore. You take a look at it, you'd actually get a really good idea of the size of the wetsuit itself. And she's kind of a celebrity because the AP came, they told a story about it, and then ultimately one of our local illustrators, wildlife illustrators, and a very well-known children's book author wrote a story about him. He could care less about food right now.
No, he couldn't. He's really interested in that leaf.
Right, so he's nesting right now.
He's nesting. So is he taking that over there to impress his mate?
Yes, he is. And I don't know if you heard that sound at all, but that was pretty much a greeting sound that he just did. pretty much he came over and said, hello, I've got some stuff. This is for you.
Oh, that's super cute. Can I get a little offer here, Miss Mate Homie? Aww.
So we do feed fish for these penguins. African penguins feed on a diet of fish in here. And, you know, again, I have a very difficult time communicating with these birds. Hey, some attention.
He doesn't want, he's not interested in meat. You've got fish.
So I've got two types of fish, and this is how I do communicate, is that they pretty much show me what their interest is in different things. We've got a herring, which is in my left hand, which Pierre could care less about, and then a caitlin, which is in my right hand. And they feed on a combination of both of these, although they do have preferences. Pierre
They're
does
very
have
picky.
They are very picky. Pierre does have more of a tendency to feed on the caitlin than he does a herring. The combination of them is not necessarily important. It's just trying to make sure that nutritionally we are making sure that every penguin in here gets enough food. So keeping track of these birds as individuals is highly important for us, which is why their job is so important. And you'll see in just a few minutes, these birds that would normally found off the coast of South Africa traveling in the ocean during the daytime in groups of 8 to 50. And in the process of them traveling, they'll find a fish, all hunt it down together, and then immediately become competitive with each other. So as I get down to the pool and I start feeding, you're going to see that competitiveness is very typical of their behavior, because ultimately the most competitive that they are, the most successfully feeding that they are doing, the more successful that they are at reproducing, and genes are going to be produced, or they're going to be able to reproduce much more successfully. So, I mean, ultimately, this competitiveness does help to create a stronger gene pool. Now in here, it's a little bit different, but off the coast of South Africa, that's truly the case. So I'm going to get down in the pool and offer these penguins an opportunity to feed while they're swimming. Kira's going to take over for a couple of minutes, and then we'll talk a little bit with all of you guys if you have any questions. Kira will introduce a little bit about the fact that these birds were just placed on the endangered species list.
So these birds, well, we've got a really nice, healthy colony right here, and you can see, oh, there we go, we've got a little bit of a feeding frenzy going on. And you'll see a guy over here with an orange wing band on his right wing. That is Domino. He's one of the more dominant males in here. But as you can see, as healthy and I mean,
it's okay.
Penguins, they are obviously at the peak of health. But these guys are not doing all that well in the wild. And part of the reason that they're not doing that well is because they have to compete with another top predator for fish stocks. Does anyone have any guess what that top predator is? There's a ton of them right in this room. That's right, they compete with humans in South Africa for stocks of Cape anchovies and sardines, which are the preferred food in the wild for these penguins. They don't really eat a very varied diet. They mostly just eat these anchovies and these sardines. So humans take too many of these fish out of the waters, the penguins can't get enough to eat, and their numbers fall. But the news isn't all bad. Education is the first step towards conservation, and just by being here today, and just by coming to view our wonderful penguin feeding and see our own captive colony, you guys have taken the first step in helping these really awesome and incredibly cool animals. And if you would like to take another step, after the presentation, I will be distributing some Monterey Bay Seafood Watch Cards. These were put together in conjunction with Monterey Bay and the California Academy of Sciences. And these will tell you, at a glance, what are your best options for eating seafood, and what are the things that you should maybe avoid. So if you have any questions about the Seafood Watch Card, feel free to ask me after the show, and I will show you how they work and explain a little more about them. So that's one of the things that you can do to help these animals. And another one is to just learn all you can about them. So it looks like things have maybe calmed down a wee bit in here. We've settled into a nice feeding routine.
If they have, I do want to explain something. So if you were paying attention, you might have noticed that a group of lights have just kind of shut down. We do have long light days in the summertime and short light days in the wintertime. So just as for ourselves, the days are getting very short very quickly for us. In fact, if any of you are leaving right around 5 o'clock, you're going to notice that it's pretty much dark out by that time period. In here, it's the same case, and as our feeds begin at 3:30, the first group of lights start to go down. We don't have all of our lights come on at the same time and go off at the same time. We slowly ramp up. We ramp up to sunrise coloration here. We eventually go to a full coloration of a full daytime light. We go down from this slowly to a sunset, to a twilight, then to a midnight flash.